Hello, welcome to this episode of EMS Now Up Close. I'm Eric Miskell with EMS Now. He is David Schild, Executive Director of our favorite industry association, the Printed Circuit Board Association of America. David, wanted to catch up. Big news came down the pike here this last week. You finally got the Senate companion bill to the, what is it, HR 3597.
Yeah, absolutely. We're
Yes.
really excited that Senators Ruben Gallego from Arizona and Senators Jim Justice from West Virginia have introduced a bill that would provide a 25% tax credit for the purchase of American-made printed circuit boards and IC substrates. That's a huge win for us. Now we're on both sides of Capitol Hill. We're in both chambers of Congress. And so now, in addition to our direct lobbying efforts in the House of Representatives, we'll be meeting with all 100 senators to talk about the importance of this legislation.
Yeah. So you're going to have to help neophytes like myself who only know about the sausage making process in Congress from what we learned on Schoolhouse Rock, right? So what does this mean? What comes next?
Well, at this point, what this does is it gives both bodies a piece of legislation to move forward. Now, we are anticipating yet another Senate bill that will focus on direct investments by the government in our industry. The House bill has a tax provision and a direct investment provision under one umbrella. So I think we're going to end up with three bills that will directly invest in and advantage markets for American PCB manufacturers, their critical material suppliers, their customers in the end. And as you know, Eric, our organization has grown now to almost 100 members. And it's not just PCB fab shops anymore. Right now, we have a lot of folks in the assembly space. We have a lot of folks in the critical materials, the testing, the design, the OEM space, because everybody sees the need for a healthy American market.
Yeah. So it goes to committee effectively then, right? And then both chambers need to negotiate with each other, agree on whatever that final bill is. Then it gets moved forward for hopefully being signed into law.
The goal would be to pass similar bills out of both the House and the Senate. Then lawmakers go to what's called conference to work out their differences between those two things. There's a lot of steps that have to happen before that occurs. And I think right now we're focused on celebrating the introduction of the bill. And of course, we need to sign up co-sponsors. We need to get other members of the United States Senate on our team. But right out of the gate, to have bipartisan to support, to have Democrats and your Republicans united in support of this bill, that's a big victory.
Yeah, no, congratulations. I saw that come across the wire here this last week, and that's why I wanted to reach out and talk. Now, this isn't the only, I mean, I know this has been a primary activity and goal for the PCBAA, but what's the status on other activities then?
You know, I'm glad you asked because in Washington specifically, there's quite a lot going on. And I'm going to go back to the House of Representatives for a second and talk about the National Defense Authorization Act, right? There's two key pieces of legislation every year that keep the Pentagon running, the authorization and the appropriation, right? Essentially, the authorizers are telling the Pentagon what to do, and the appropriators are giving them the money to do it. And the NDAA, as we call it, has several pro PCB pieces of language in the fiscal year 27 bill that I think are worth mentioning. I'll go through those if that's all right.
Please, please.
We've got what's called Section 815. And what that does is it reduces the threshold for what we call micro purchases of foreign electronics. Many people don't know this, but right now, below a certain dollar threshold, you don't have to follow sourcing requirements at the Pentagon. If you're spending below a certain amount of money, you can actually source foreign parts, foreign PCBs. We don't think that makes sense in any defense systems. So we've gotten that limit lowered to a much smaller number. There's also what's called Section 1804. This is an analysis and reporting requirement that says that the Pentagon has to regularly report back to Congress on certain items. Where is the Pentagon buying them from? The good news is this year we've added PCBs to that list. So the political appointees at the Pentagon will have to come back to congressional committees on a regular basis and say, you asked where I'm getting my PCBs from, and this is the answer. I think that level of scrutiny is going to be a boon for our industry. And then finally, Section 1821 of the NDAA authorizes the Defense Industrial Base Fund to spend money on advanced microelectronics. There's a lot of pots of money at the Pentagon, Eric, and you are probably most familiar with the Defense Production Act or the DPA fund that has led to about $116 million in investments in UHDI capacity in the United States. Now we have this additional fund, right? The Defense Industrial Base Fund that will also be empowered to spend money on PCBs. And what that means in real terms is that companies that are out there pursuing specific capacities and specific technologies that the Department of War needs, they can now apply to these pockets or buckets of money for funding.
Yeah. I was struck by the fact that we've just had some, I don't know, runoff elections and what have you, and we had some people, big name people, getting removed, won't be here come the fall, right? But I thought about you because it really underscores the fact that your ongoing mission to educate, advocate, and legislate, right? You have to always be re-engaging, it seems like, and it looks like you have that challenge ahead of you again.
Yeah, the Congress turns over the entire House of Representatives every 2 years, and the Senate, a third of the Senate every 2 years as well. And what I would say is we are, I don't know, 158 days away from the midterm elections. We're something like almost 900 days away from the next presidential election, but who's counting? When a lawmaker who is our champion or who is a passionate defender of our issues, when they depart Congress, and that is the nature of this business in Washington, we do have to make new friends, build new alliances, and do that educate, advocate, legislate mission all over again. I'll use as an example Congressman Krishnamurthy from Illinois, ran unsuccessfully for the Senate. He's going to be leaving Congress basically at the end of this term, right? He'll be out as effectively in January. And so we have to look for new aisles, Democratic allies to support H.R. 3597. And I think we've already found a couple of members that will pick up that mantle and carry it forward. And I think in states like Louisiana and states like Texas, we're obviously going to see some of the incumbents depart Congress. New faces will sit in those seats. And part of our mission is to go in, it's to introduce themselves, it's to leave behind one of these circuit cards and say to people, we've got an important message about industrial capacity, about domestic production, about secure technologies that you need to hear.
Yeah. Listen, and I think about it, your work or the work of PCBAA and its members, people who support it, isn't just restricted to Washington. I noticed recently several posts of members hosting senators at their facilities. I think it was in Iowa and Wisconsin, right? And I think that really makes the point how important that is to engage these people and let these guys in their home states see the impact of the industry.
Yeah, I was talking to a prospective member the other day at their assembly facility, and one of the things I said was, you've got a really impressive operation here. You're servicing an important Department of War customer. Have you had your senator, have you had your member of Congress walk through here? And they said, no, that's not something that ever occurred to us. And one of the benefits of membership is we make those connections, because I can tell you, Eric, a member of Congress, when they hear there's a manufacturing facility, it's high tech, there's a lot of jobs, there's a lot of economic impact, and perhaps, most importantly, it's servicing our men and women in uniform, they want to walk through that facility, right? That's retail politics 101. And so I'm really proud of the congressional visits we've done. And as we head into the August recess this year, I think we'll have many more to talk about.
Now, I also wanted to ask you to explain something. I noticed you appeared on CNBC, and there's something forthcoming there. And what are they doing a piece on specifically on the PCB industry, or is this more a broader piece about the whole kind of electronics ecosystem?
Yeah, I'm very excited for this. And I was fortunate enough to sit down and do an interview with their team. This goes back to our documentary, The New Frontier. That short film about the PCB industry continues to make inroads in new and unexpected places. And when the team at CNBC saw it on the heels of some reporting they had done about semiconductors, they said, hey, we think there's more to the story here. We'd like to talk about printed circuit boards. So they've been filming at several PCB factories. They've been interviewing a number of executives from the industry as well as government officials. And I think in the next few weeks, you're going to see a pretty lengthy segment on the challenges the American PCB market faces. I don't know everything that's going to be in that report, but I'm excited to watch it.
No, that is excellent news. And I'm glad to hear. I kind of assumed it was a follow-up to the movie, right? But
Sure.
that triggered it. Listen, I want to be respectful here, but I do want to give a chance to talk about your annual meeting that's coming up. I see that you have Undersecretary of Commerce as one of the featured speakers there. So that's in DC next month. Tell us about it.
Yeah, in just under 3 weeks, we're going to have our 5th annual meeting. This is the 5-year anniversary of PCBAA's founding. This will be our biggest and best meeting ever. Almost 100 executives from across that whole PCB ecosystem. We're at the Mayflower Hotel in Washington, D.C., and we're going to have any number of guests from the Department of Commerce, the Department of War, the PCB executive agent will be there. There's an OEM panel with some pretty heavy hitters from the aerospace and defense industry talking about their supply chain needs. And of course, it's just an opportunity for the leaders of the PCB community to come together under one roof, discuss what's important to us, and then get on a bus and go up to Capitol Hill and lobby on the legislation that you and I have just been talking about. So I'm excited. A lot of work to pull this off. but we're really looking forward to this gathering in DC.
Yeah, no, that is fantastic news. And we talked at the beginning. Sorry, I can't be there. I'll be elsewhere on the planet. But that sounds like it. And it just shows it for the people who are watching, right? The benefits of getting involved here. I think being involved in an event like that, is certainly good. I think encourage people and EMS specifically, as you said, I've noticed more joining and getting involved. I was glad to hear the update on the 100 members, almost 100 members there. That shows great growth over the last few
Well,
years.
I really appreciate that. And you've been tremendously helpful by getting our message out there. I like talking to companies in this space because
Mhm.
so often what I will hear is I'm running a factory. I'm worried about P&L. I've got product to ship. I don't want to open a Washington office. I don't want to hire a media team. If I can be a part of a group that is educating, advocating, and legislating, and I can stick to running my business, that's a great fit for me. And I would say to a lot of your listeners, to a lot of folks in the PCB ecosystem, that's the value proposition we offer. Even if you're not going to be with us in a few weeks in Washington, D.C., we need you on the team.
Yeah, and also I would just strikes me as tremendous networking and developing your networks across this important industry as this moves forward. These are some relationships that will continue and should be beneficial and reap benefits for the people who are there. So
Yeah, I'm always happy to put folks who are business partners, sometimes competimates, in
yeah.
the same room and see what magic happens.
Yeah, no, no, no. Well, listen, keep up the good work,
Thank you.
and let's get some updates later in the year again. And I am going to go back and watch Schoolhouse Rock because it's we all grew up with that, and it's such a classic piece. So if you haven't seen it, by the way, folks, go look it up. So
Yes, safe travels to you, and I'm sure we'll talk soon.
yes, we will, David. Thank you, sir. Cheers.
Thank you.
Bye bye.